The sun hadn't even risen when the transport van carrying Luna slipped off the highway curve just outside Santa Clarita. It was a routine transfer, at least on paper. Luna, now several months pregnant, was being moved from one secure medical facility to another. Nothing high risk, nothing out of the ordinary, until the crash. Authorities claimed it was a mechanical failure, brake fluid issues, slippery road conditions, a deer, perhaps. But by the time the wreckage was cleared and Luna was found unconscious but alive in a drainage ditch nearly a mile from the crash site, one fact was chillingly clear. Every inch of surveillance footage from inside the van was gone. The data feed cut out 20 minutes before impact. The GPS tracker had been removed. The guards, both supposedly injured, gave statements riddled with inconsistencies. One insisted they blacked out seconds before the crash. The other claimed he saw headlights coming straight at them from the oncoming lane, but no vehicle was recovered. No tire marks. No witnesses. As news broke, chaos followed. No one knew what had really happened. Was it just a tragic accident? A freak failure of technology and transport? Or was it something far more sinister, a staged crash, a veiled threat, a warning cloaked as misfortune? 3 theories emerged fast and violently. The first, Luna had orchestrated the whole thing with help. That this was an escape plan, a calculated maneuver by someone on the outside. Someone powerful. Maybe someone in love. The second, someone wanted her silenced. The baby, her silence, her truth too dangerous to surface. The crash was a message. Confess, take the blame, or next time, it won't be a warning. And the third, the most dangerous of all, that this was all connected to a war brewing between 2 titans of influence, Bill Spencer and Steffi Forrester. Within hours, both had launched parallel media offensives. Bill went live on Spencer Publications' own streaming channel, solemn and commanding as ever. The camera was tight on his face. The framing was perfect. "Let me be clear," he said. "My sources confirm there is more to this crash than we've been told. My people are investigating what the police won't. If you think this was an accident, you're naive. Luna has been a pawn for too long, and I won't stand by while she's taken out behind the scenes. I've faced darker forces than this. Whoever is behind it, whoever is trying to bury the truth, you're on notice." Hours later, Forrester Creations held their own press brief and carefully curated, visually poised, and undeniably corporate. Steffi took the mic, standing against a sleek white backdrop bearing the Forrester logo. "This tragedy is heartbreaking," she said. "But let's not twist it into something it's not. This was a logistical failure, a preventable, but ultimately explainable event. What we cannot allow is for unstable rumors to poison public perception. We cannot afford conspiracy theories that exploit an injured woman and a child not yet born. Let's let law enforcement do their job." The lines were drawn. Behind closed doors, the real battle had already started. Bill doubled his security. Steffi tightened her control of press access and employee statements. Luna, still hospitalized, was placed under 24-hour watch, both for her protection and to keep her from talking to anyone not cleared by Forrester or Spencer's legal teams. But the wild card was Will. Bill's son had been mostly out of the spotlight in recent months, working behind the scenes, learning the ropes of the business. But Luna's situation struck a nerve. He knew her, had once tried to help her. He remembered quiet moments before everything fell apart. And now, caught between his father's firestorm and Steffi's relentless containment strategy, Will became the face of confusion until he was forced to choose. A doctored video started to circulate online, a blurry clip showing someone who resembled Luna's profile being pulled from the wreckage by a man in a hooded sweatshirt. It was heavily edited, clearly manipulated, but it spread like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags exploded. Lunascape, Forresterkavurup, Spencer Truth. Will was asked to comment. Press shoved microphones in his face. Investors from both camps started asking questions. Social media dissected every move. Was Luna a victim or a fugitive? Was Bill fighting for justice or leveraging chaos for influence? Was Steffi protecting the brand or hiding something darker? Then came the leak. An anonymous email landed in multiple inboxes, media, bloggers, insiders. Attached, fragments of internal Forrester communications referencing Luna's pregnancy and containment strategy. Context unclear. Authenticity unknown. But the impact was nuclear. Steffi called emergency board meetings. Carter went into damage control. Ridge, who had stayed out of the Luna affair until now, started asking pointed questions about who knew what and when. Bill, sensing blood in the water, doubled down. He offered a reward for any whistleblower tied to the crash. He threatened to sue the transport contractor, the hospital, even the local sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Will went quiet. He stopped responding to both his father and Steffi's team. He disappeared from public view. Not even his closest advisors knew where he stood. Until one night, without fanfare, he released a video statement on his personal social media account. No production, no logos, just a grainy recording from a dim office. I've seen enough lies to know when something doesn't add up. I don't know who sabotaged that van. I don't know who's using Luna. But I know this what's happening isn't about justice. It's about control. I won't be a pawn. And I won't be silent. Luna deserves the truth. So do we. He didn't pick a side. He didn't have to. The message was clear. The game had changed. The battle for narrative had just gotten bloodier. Behind the scenes, Luna began to regain consciousness. Her first words weren't about the crash. They were about the baby. She asked if it was safe. If he was safe. She didn't name names. She didn't accuse. But the fear in her eyes said more than any press release could. Steffi pushed harder to keep her under Forrester's watch. Bill attempted to pull legal strings to move her to a private clinic. The sheriff's department, under scrutiny and now tainted by speculation, stalled the investigation. No formal charges. No clear direction. No answers. Meanwhile, the public grew restless. Memes, TikToks, fake headlines, AI-generated images. Luna's crash had gone viral. And the longer the silence stretched, the more dangerous it became. Every hour without a definitive explanation gave rise to another theory, another faction, another layer of deceit. Was the crash an assassination attempt? A staged abduction? Or a desperate mother's final attempt to run from a world she could no longer survive? No one knew. Or maybe someone did and had buried the truth so deep not even blood ties could pull it back up. And as the war between the Forresters and the Spencers escalated into a media arms race, the fate of Luna and the child she carried hung in the balance. One crash, a dozen motives, zero clarity. Only one thing was certain. The road ahead would be paved in secrets, and someone was about to pay the price. Nick Marone's return to Los Angeles wasn't meant to be a spectacle, but within 48 hours, it was exactly that. His presence, always tied to complicated emotions and complicated deals, sent waves through both boardrooms and bedrooms. The moment Brooke saw him step out of the black SUV at the Forrester showroom event, she froze. Years had passed, but time had done nothing to dull the unspoken ache between them. Ridge saw it too. His jaw clenched, hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. But he said nothing as Nick walked in with the calm confidence of a man who hadn't forgotten how power worked in this town. But Nick didn't return just for nostalgia. Marone Industries had been lying low, restructuring, diversifying. But now they were back in the game and with a specific target, broadcast leverage. Forrester Creations had an iron grip on fashion television, with their runway specials syndicated internationally and their behind-the-scenes series streamed across major platforms. But that grip depended on fragile licensing deals, vulnerable to pressure. Nick had done his homework. He knew who owned what. He knew where the contracts were weakest. Behind closed doors, Nick met with Bill Spencer. The two men had rarely aligned in the past. Their business styles clashed. Their histories with Brooke were a point of thinly veiled tension. But now a shared interest brought them to the table: control. Spencer Publications needed a foothold to influence the Luna investigation. Public sentiment was shifting, but without legal momentum, Bill was stuck throwing punches at shadows. What he needed was leverage legal muscle that didn't scream personal vendetta. Marone Industries could provide it. They had lawyers, analysts, and offshore connections. In exchange, Nick wanted something very specific: Spencer's media arm to apply pressure on the Forrester broadcast syndicate. With enough pressure, and the threat of pulling licensing through joint bids, they could force Forrester into renegotiations. Not to destroy Forrester creations, just to nick up them long enough to take a piece of their spotlight. The alliance wasn't meant to last. Both men knew it. It was a chess move, not a merger. Short-term power for long-term disruption. And in the middle of it sat Brooke Logan. She wasn't privy to the deal at first, but she felt its tremors. Calls from network partners. An abrupt pause on a major spring showcase. Legal memos floating around with odd language about licensing vulnerability. When she confronted Rich, he brushed her off. "We've survived worse," he said. "Let Nick try." He's bluffing, but he wasn't. The pressure campaign worked. Forrester's show was pulled from 2 European networks. A third demanded renegotiation. Suddenly, Steffi was in meetings all day. Carter was buried in legal reviews. The Forrester board was rattled. And in the middle of it all, Bill Spencer's legal team filed an amicus brief with the court handling Luna's case, offering technical assistance on precedent and custody protections. It was subtle, veiled, but effective. Carter saw through it immediately. He stormed into Steffi's office. "They're using the legal system as leverage. Bill's trying to turn this into a corporate siege. And Nick's giving him cover." Steffi didn't flinch. "Then we fight back. We lock down our contracts, renegotiate our exclusivity clauses, and we make sure Luna doesn't get railroaded into a media circus." But the question rippled beneath every conversation: was justice even possible when billions were on the table? The Luna case had already drawn controversy. Now, with 2 corporate giants lobbying from the sidelines, nothing felt neutral. Reporters began to frame it not as a personal tragedy, but as a pawn in a war between conglomerates. Activists protested outside the courthouse. Opinion pieces questioned whether public defenders could ever fairly compete with lawyers bankrolled by media titans. Brooke confronted Nick in a quiet corner of Il Giardino. "You say you care about people, about doing the right thing, but this, you're gambling with someone's life, someone's future, just to get airtime." Nick met her eyes, unreadable. "This isn't about airtime. It's about forcing a system to notice when it's being manipulated. The Forresters have done it for decades. I'm just playing their game for once." She leaned in. "And if Luna gets crushed between your deal and Bill's ambition," his voice softened, "she won't. I've made sure of that." But Brooke wasn't convinced. She had seen too many people lose themselves in the pursuit of power, Nick included. Still, some part of her wondered if maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he was trying to balance the scale in his own way. Meanwhile, in the Forrester camp, Steffi was on edge. Every hour brought a new complication. Thomas offered a strategy: shift focus, launch a new campaign with a philanthropic edge, partner with advocacy groups for women's rights, public defenders, and prenatal care. Turn Luna's tragedy into a movement. Not exploit it, amplify it. But even that plan danced on a razor's edge. One misstep and it would look like PR damage control. Rich refused to back down. He met with industry contacts, leaned on old favors, and threatened to pull Forrester advertising from any network that sided with Marone or Spencer. The family dug in deeper. Every move became a counter-move. Every call, every press release, every court appearance twisted into another play in a game that had little to do with justice and everything to do with leverage. Inside the courthouse, Luna's legal team changed tone. Suddenly, they had more resources, sharper motions, better preparation. Someone likely Marone's people had stepped in quietly. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't visible. But it changed everything. A judge who had been on the verge of fast-tracking the case now slowed down, requesting more information, citing due process. Bill stood in the shadows, watching it unfold, knowing exactly what they had done. And for once, he didn't feel like the villain. He felt like the system was finally bending, if not toward justice, then at least toward attention. The public, of course, saw through none of it, or all of it. To some, Luna became a symbol of systemic failure. To others, she was a plot device in a billionaire war. To a few, she remained what she had always been, a young woman caught in the crossfire of powerful people playing games with consequences she couldn't control. And then, the breaking point. An independent journalist leaked an internal email chain between Marone Legal and Spencer's general counsel. The subject line, strategic convergence, the contents, heavily redacted, but damning enough to suggest that Luna's legal limbo was a pressure tactic, that her case was being extended not for fairness, but for control. The story went viral. Headlines screamed justice for sale, and behind Luna's trial, a billionaire tug-of-war, politicians weighed in. Judges received death threats. Forrester stock dropped 3% overnight. Spencer's media division was hit with protests. Marone Industries was subpoenaed for documents. Brooke, again, was the voice of reason. She met Nick at the marina, away from cameras. "You got your leverage," she said. "Is it enough?" He didn't answer right away, just stared out at the water. "It was never about enough," he finally said. It was about not being powerless again, and now she asked. He turned to her. "Now we see if any of us have the guts to step back before someone really gets hurt." The next day, Spencer Publications issued a statement. They were withdrawing all legal filings related to Luna's case. Marone Industries, too, publicly confirmed they were stepping back from broadcast negotiations. The damage was already done. Lines had been crossed. Allegiances had been tested. And somewhere in a hospital bed, Luna waited, carrying not just a child, but the burden of being the fulcrum on which billion-dollar decisions had been made. Justice, in the end, had come, but not cleanly, not quietly, and not without